Once again, we'll see the women in action tomorrow right here on the network taking on England. Anything in particular for you, Ollie, that stood out with what Bev Priestman said?
Well, that Ashley Lawrence debate and the position debate is going to dominate things, right? I think right up till the Olympics, and I think it's a crucial decision that Bev Priestman has to get right, and one that she's going to be judged on. You know, where she deploys her and how it works out in a particular game. It's just so funny how similar it is to the Alphonso Davies debate, and I feel like we've heard John Herdman say the same thing about keeping opponents guessing and opposition not knowing, you know, where the player is going to play, and that being an advantage. I don't know how much of that at this point is mind games with Ashley Lawrence and just maybe keeping the opponents guessing, because for me, the case for her in midfield has just become so compelling, right? You know, the idea of through the spine of the team, having Buchanan, Lawrence, Sinclair, your best players in the central positions, I think it's difficult to argue against that now. We'll see. We need to see a bit more evidence in terms of, you know, what the finished product looks like on the field, but the qualities that Ashley Lawrence gives you, the dynamic running, the quality on the ball, I think it's got to be at the center of this Canadian team.
Gareth, in 2019, in 12 matches, the Canadian women scored 12 goals, 5 of them coming from Christine St. Clair. And then in the She Believes Cup, a tournament we had right here, smaller sample, 3 games, but just 1 goal. In that friendly against Wales a couple days ago, they ended up winning 3-0. Did that maybe ease any worries that you would have had about goal scoring?
Perhaps I'm going against the grain here, but the goal scoring, the finishing isn't my biggest concern when it comes to this group. I don't even know if it's in my top 3, honestly. I think Ollie hit on it, like that midfield makeup, the engine of the team, the ability to create chances like this that was set up by a wonderful ball by Quinn. Playing it wide to Janine Becky, creating chances like that. That's on a platter to the end. And look at that, Ashley Lawrence getting forward to a fellow midfielder inside the area, getting numbers forward. It's about the method. It's about the way that the team builds. Not reliant on one player in Christine Sinclair, which at times over the course of recent history, it was kick the ball forward to Christine Sinclair and let her do the work. For this group to be successful, they need to play like a team. And that starts beyond what's going on in terms of the number 9 role in this team. I just think there's so much more to it rather than just simply putting the ball into the back of the net.
Let's take a look at some positional battles here. Where do you see the positional battles emerging on this squad, Ollie?
I think there's 2, and we'll look at the projected roster I've got in a minute, but I think there's 2 that stand out for me, and maybe there may be 3 or 4 roster spots up for grabs, but I think it's possible there's only 1 or 2 at this point, and Bev Priestman might be increasingly set in her mind. I think the first one is obviously in goal, and that's going to depend on health. Steph LeBay will go to the Olympics, barring injury. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Kaylin Sheridan, we obviously want to see her get back healthy. If she can do that and prove she's fit, then I think she goes with her and could be the starter. Certainly will be competing with LeBay for the starting job. If not, then you start to look at Sabrina D'Angelo, who's come off an injury of her own and is now back playing. And obviously Erin McLeod is kind of the safe pair of hands, but not really a starter in the NWSL anymore, and obviously in the latter stages of her career. So I think that's one of the big battles that we're going to see. And then the other one, I don't think you can be more specific than just saying there is room for 1 more midfielder or forward who can make an impact to play their way onto the roster. I don't think there's a particular profile of player necessarily, but you look at Jordan Lee Strode, Sarah Stratigakis, Adriana Leon, if she can get healthy, Evelyn Vienne. I think Sophie Schmidt might increasingly be in that mix despite being such a, you know, an ever-present in past years. And then obviously if Diana Matheson can get healthy, she might be the player that takes that spot. I think you're just looking for someone, whether it's in midfield or in attack, who can give you something different than they've got in the players who are maybe more solidified on the roster.
Okay, so those battles will play themselves out, and obviously this is a little over 3 months away from Tokyo, so we know that this projected 18-person roster will change, but let's take a look at who you have right now, Ollie, on your Tokyo Olympic roster for the Canadian women. Take us through some of the thought process here.
Yeah, so it looks as if Kaylin Sheridan should be back in time, so I've got her with Steph LeBay for now. 3 fullbacks in Revere, Carl and Chapman. The useful thing with Carl is she can play both sides. Buchanan, Zadorsky and Gilles, I don't think there's going to be much discussion there about those 3 being the best 3 centre-backs. Then in midfield, I like the Fleming, Quinn and Lawrence trio that we saw in the second half against Wales. I think that could be your starting group. I think Desiree Scott is definitely there for her experience and her ability to be the holding midfielder. At the minute, I've got Jordan Listro just because I think she's adaptable and versatile and can fill in a few different areas, and that's going to be important on a roster with only 18 players. But again, as I mentioned, that spot I think is the one that's really up for grabs. And then 2 centre forwards in Sinclair and Heitema, and 3 options on the wing in Prince, Becky and Deanne Rose. So that's what I'm looking at the minute. As I said, Listro is the one where I think there's a number of players in that mix who could be in contention still.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's that one midfield role. And up top, should more pressure be put on Jordan Heitema? Like, to go out and produce against top competition. She can score lots of goals against weaker nations. We know that. She's not playing regular football with PSG. That's a problem. You want players on good form who are in some kind of rhythm. Evelyn Vienne, I don't think she was very good at all at She Believes, but against Wales, she showed us something. She showed she was much more active, much more confident, went on and scored a goal as well. Perhaps there's a role up top, and perhaps it'll be good for Heitema if there is a little bit of pressure coming from behind. Simply put, like, it's time to go. It's go time, and against England, I think it's a huge game for Heitema to show that she belongs and she can get in and produce against one of the top footballing nations in the world. And remember, Rhian Wilkinson knows a lot of these young Canadian players. There's going to be the ties that bind in this game. So it's going to be up to these Canadian players to make an impression against a team that will be familiar with a lot of their habits and a lot of the ways that they want to go in and play.